4:30 a.m., the front door clicked open. I was standing barefoot on the cold kitchen tile, stirring eggs while my 2-month-old son slept in his bassinet just inches away, safe from the heat of the stove. He had finally fallen asleep after hours of soft crying. Adam walked in without looking at me. He loosened his tie and dropped a single word: divorce. No explanation, no hesitation. I did not cry. I did not ask why. I simply turned off the stove and let the silence settle. Adam thought I was leaving with nothing. He was wrong. It was not a breakdown. It was an audit. Have you ever felt like the only one trying to save your family while the person next to you was quietly tearing it apart? Share your story in the comments. My eyes remain dry. Tears are an emotional overdraft I could no longer afford to pay. In my line of work, you learn that emotions cloud the data, and right now, the data was all that mattered. I walked past Adam without a single word, treating him like a piece of furniture that had outlived its utility. The suitcase I pulled from the back of the closet was the same one I had used 3 years ago when I first moved into the Charleston manor. Back then, I thought I was building a legacy. Now, I was performing an emergency extraction. I packed with the precision of a field audit, 3 days of clothes for me, a week's worth of diapers for my son, and the formula. Every motion was methodical. Every zip was final. When I returned to the hallway, Adam was still leaning against the kitchen counter, scrolling through his phone as if he had just checked the weather, instead of ending a marriage. He did not even look up when he asked, "Where are you going?" "Out," I replied. I did not give him a destination. I did not give him an explanation. I did not give him a single shred of the drama his family had spent years accusing me of. I strapped my 2-month-old son into his car seat and felt a chilling, steady clarity settle over me. The emotional equity I'd poured into this household was officially written off as a total loss. The pre-dawn sky was a bruised, quiet blue as I pulled out of the driveway. The historic colonial manor, with its white pillars and manicured hedges, looked like a tomb in my rearview mirror. They thought I was leaving with nothing because I was leaving quietly. They were wrong. I drove across town to a neighborhood where the houses are older and the people are sharper. I parked in front of a pale blue home with a wind chime that rang softly in the morning breeze. Vanessa was already at the door. At 64, she was a retired forensic accountant who had seen enough perfect families fall apart to recognize the look in my eyes. She did not ask for an explanation. She simply stepped aside and said, "Come in, Madison." The air in her house smelled like lavender and old paper. It was the first time in 3 years I felt like I could breathe without asking for permission. The audit was officially beginning. Vanessa set a mug in front of me. I did not reach for it. I was looking at the folder I'd pulled from the bottom of my son's diaper bag. My life was a series of spreadsheets, and currently, the balance was heavily skewed in Adam's favor. Most people see a historic manor in Charleston and think of wealth. I saw a prison built with my own money. 3 years ago, I received an inheritance of $350,000 from my father. It was supposed to be my safety net. Adam, with his easy smile and talk of property development, said he would manage it for us. He called it seed capital for our shared future. I believed him because love is the ultimate blind spot in an audit. He funneled that money into his luxury developments, and slowly, my access disappeared. On paper, I was a millionaire. In reality, I had to ask my mother-in-law, Stephanie, for $20 just to buy extra nursing pads. It was a sophisticated form of financial abuse. They turned me into a high-functioning domestic appliance while they used my capital to rent a lifestyle I was barely allowed to inhabit. People might ask why I stayed so long, why I kept stirring the soup and making the beds while they looked through me. It was not weakness. It was a strategy. I was wearing the invisible chains of a survivor. These chains were not made of iron. They were made of debt and restricted accounts. In that house, I was not just a wife or a mother. I was a ghost, haunting my own bank account. But while I was making their morning coffee, I was also making notes. While I was cleaning Adam's office, I was scanning his personal ledgers. I realized that my silence was my greatest asset. My family did not think I was capable of understanding the complex offshore transfers or the shell companies Adam was using. They saw a sensible girl who was useful for chores. They did not see the forensic accountant who was quietly compiling an airtight case, ensuring every piece of evidence was documented to be admissible in a court of law. I did not scream because I was busy calculating the interest. I did not fight because I was waiting for the paper trail to lead exactly where I needed it to go. My compassion had been a luxury they'd overdrafted for years, and now I was here to collect. Vanessa looked at the folder. She did not look at me with pity. She looked at me like a fellow hunter. "You've been thorough, Madison," she whispered. "I'm a forensic accountant, Vanessa," I said, my voice as cold as the morning air. "I don't leave until every penny is accounted for. And Adam owes me far more than $350,000. The doorbell did not just ring, it demanded to be answered. I did not need to look through the peephole to know who was standing on Vanessa's porch. The scent of expensive, suffocating perfume usually preceded her by 5 minutes. It was Stephanie, my mother-in-law. She did not wait to be invited in. She stepped into the foyer like she was inspecting a low-tier hotel, her eyes raking over the simple furniture before landing on me. There was no warmth in her gaze, only a sharp calculation of how this mess would affect the family brand. "Madison, this is enough," she said, her voice smooth and dangerous. Adam was in a mood. Men get tired. They say things they do not mean when the pressure of carrying an entire legacy is on their shoulders. You should know that by now. I looked at her from across the kitchen table. I did not offer her coffee. I did not offer her a chair. He said the word divorce. At 4:30 in the morning, Stephanie. That isn't a mood. That's a filing. She laughed, a thin, rehearsed sound. "And you responded by running away like a teenager? We have a fundraising gala on Saturday. 300 guests are expecting the devoted wife of the city's rising developer, not an empty chair." This was the trap of normalized cruelty. In families like Adam's, labor is not something you pay for. It is something you extract from those you deem lower in the hierarchy. To Stephanie, my years of making breakfast, managing their social calendars, and even my $350,000 inheritance were just natural resources. She did not see me as a person. She saw me as a functional piece of the manor's decor. When a lamp breaks, you fix it. You do not let it leave. "I'm not going to the gala," I said. Stephanie's expression hardened. The socialite mask slipped, revealing the predator underneath. "Listen to me very carefully. Adam stands in the light because I built the stage. Everything in that house, the cars, the accounts, even the air you breathe, is in his name. Or mine. You think that forensic folder will save you? Charleston is an old money town, Madison. We own the judges. We own the banks. You leave now, and you leave with exactly what you brought. A suitcase and a child you won't be able to afford." She leaned in closer, her voice a sharp whisper. "You're an auditor. You should know how to read a room. You have zero leverage. Come home, cook the dinner, and maybe Adam will let you keep the guest house after the papers are signed. Be sensible." I did not flinch. I did not defend myself. My anger was not loud this time. It was clinical. I waited for her to finish, then I stood up, signaling the end of our transaction. "You're right about one thing, Stephanie," I said. "I should know how to read a room, and right now I'm reading a massive liability. You think you own the stage? I'm the one who audited the wood it's built on, and I found termites." "Get out," I added. She turned on her heel, her designer shoes clicking aggressively against the wood floor. She was not shocked by what they'd done. She was shocked that I'd stopped playing along. I sat back down and opened my laptop. The screen glowed with a different kind of sunrise, the kind made of facts, numbers, and quiet retribution. After the door clicked shut behind Stephanie, the air in the room did not just clear, it sharpened. Vanessa did not say a word. She just walked to a hidden wall, safe, behind a row of ancient tax law books, and pulled out a leather-bound journal. It looked like a relic from a different era, but for a forensic accountant, it was the master cipher. 20 years ago, Vanessa whispered, her fingers tracing the worn cover. "I was the lead auditor on your father-in-law's first development project. I almost had him. Madison. I found the shell companies, the double-entry bookkeeping, the ghost investors, but Charleston's old money network did exactly what Stephanie threatened. They buried the evidence and retired me early. They thought I was gone. They did not realize I kept the map to their burial grounds. We opened the digital black box I'd carried out of the manor. For years, I'd been the silent investor in their version of family, footing the bill with my labor and my inheritance. Now, I realized it had been a subscription I never agreed to, and I was finally canceling the service. I handed Vanessa the drive containing Adam's encrypted property ledgers. My fingers did not shake. I was not a wife looking for closure, I was a hunter looking for a trail. Vanessa plugged the drive into her rig. The software began its rhythmic pulse, breaking through Adam's amateur encryption. He was arrogant. He thought a complex password was enough to hide a lifetime of fraud from a woman he deemed invisible. But arrogance is the greatest vulnerability in any audit. There, Vanessa said, pointing to a series of recurring transfers, the numbers were disguised as consulting fees for a firm in the Cayman Islands, but the frequency was wrong. They were timed to hit exactly 48 hours before Adam's major project deadlines. We spent the next 4 hours untangling the web. It was a masterpiece of deception, but numbers have a way of screaming when they're being forced to lie. When the final balance sheet settled, the discrepancy stared back at us in cold digital ink. $1,400,000. Adam was not a rising star in the development world. He was a sinking ship using my $350,000 inheritance as collateral to secure the predatory loans he needed to hide a $1,400,000 hole. But the hole was too big. He'd been bleeding capital into an offshore entity for years, hiding the losses from his investors and his own mother. I rubbed my eyes, trying to summon regret, but there was only clarity. This was not a marriage. It was a failing corporate merger. My compassion had been a luxury they'd overdrafted until the account hit zero. He's not just broke, Madison, Vanessa said, her voice lethal and calm. He's committing securities fraud to hide it. And look at these withdrawal dates. He's moving fast. I leaned back, watching the data stream across the screen. By the time the real sun crested the horizon, the glow from my screen was no longer a promise. It was a verdict. Every digit had fallen into place, weaving a digital cage Adam would never see coming. This was not revenge. It was accounting. And the audit was about to go live. The kill shot did not arrive with a bang. It arrived with a signature that was exactly 1 millimeter too long. I sat in the blue glow of Vanessa's monitors, staring at a scanned document titled Collateral Authorization for the Azure Heights Development. In my world, a signature is a biometric contract. I know the exact pressure I apply to the paper, the way my wrist hitches on the S. In Madison, the signature on the screen looked like mine, but it was a forgery. It was a high-resolution copy-paste from our marriage license superimposed onto a loan document that I had never seen, authorizing the immediate mortgage of my $350,000 inheritance. Adam hadn't just managed my money, he had leveraged it. He used my inheritance as the seed to trigger a chain of fraudulent credits totaling over $1 million. He had risked my entire future to build a financial shield, hoping to bridge that $1,400,000 deficit in his primary accounts. The betrayal was not just emotional anymore, it was a felony. Vanessa leaned in, her eyes sharp behind her reading glasses. "Look at the filing date, Madison," she whispered. The document had been notarized and filed 3 weeks ago. Suddenly, the 4:30 a.m. verdict made perfect sense. The corporate tax audit deadline was April 15th. In the eyes of the law, the spouse who manages the asset is the one who carries the liability. By demanding a divorce and pushing me out of the manor immediately, Adam was not just tired of the marriage. He was executing a preemptive strike. He wanted me legally separated and physically removed from the house before the year-end books were closed. He was planning to frame me as the sensible wife who had mismanaged her own inheritance, pinning the entire $1,400,000 fraud on my shoulders while he walked away with a clean slate. He thought I was a domestic appliance he could simply unplug and discard before the system short-circuited. He believed my silence for the last 3 years was proof of my ignorance. He did not realize that a tax auditor does not just read the lines. We read the gaps between them. "He's not just asking for a divorce," I said. My voice is flat and clinical as a court transcript. "He's asking for a fall person." He needs me to be the ghost in his machine so he does not have to face federal prison. I looked at the forgery again. Every curve of that fake signature was a piece of evidence. This was not a domestic dispute. It was a crime scene. And Adam had left his fingerprints all over the ledger. I felt a cold, sharp satisfaction. Adam had spent years trying to make me feel small, but in his arrogance, he had made himself vulnerable. He had handed me the very weapon I needed to dismantle his entire empire. He expected me to be at the manor, packing my things in tears. Instead, I was here, in the lavender-scented silence of Vanessa's office, finalizing the emergency petition and a restraining order to freeze all joint marital assets. April 15th is 6 weeks away, I said, looking at Vanessa. But the fundraising gala is this Saturday. That's when the investors are signing the new contracts. That's the audit deadline I care about. My focus remained absolute, my vision clear and lethal. I had a paper trail, a forensic expert, and the truth. The subscription to my silence had officially expired. The Charleston manor was glowing. Hundreds of lanterns lined the driveway, casting a warm, deceptive light over the white pillars. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of lilies and $500 an ounce perfume. Adam stood in the center of the ballroom, his glass raised, holding court with the city's wealthiest investors. He looked like the perfect image of success. He looked like a man who had not demanded a divorce in the dark 10 days ago. I walked through the front doors, and for a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. I was not wearing the navy dress Stephanie had mocked. I was wearing my sharpest charcoal suit. I was not there to blend into the wallpaper. I was there to be the final entry on the balance sheet. Adam saw me, and his smile did not just falter. It died. He handed his glass to a server and moved toward me, his voice a low, frantic hiss. "Madison, what are you doing?" "I told you to stay away." "I'll let you keep the guest house. Just don't do this." "I'm not here for the guest house, Adam," I said. I stepped past him, heading straight for the small stage where he'd been about to announce the new investment round. Stephanie blocked my path, her eyes wild, with a mixture of fear and fury. "You sensible little girl," she whispered. "You're going to ruin everything. Think of the family name." "The family name is a shell company, Stephanie," I replied. I walked onto the stage and took the microphone. The silence was absolute. "Thank you all for being here to invest in Adam's vision," I began, my voice steady and professional. "But before you sign those contracts, I think you should see the internal audit of the Azure Heights project. And specifically, the forensic report regarding the $350,000 of inheritance used as illegal collateral." I handed the first folder to the lead investor, a man who had known Adam's father for 40 years. I watched as he opened it, his eyebrows climbing toward his hairline. This was the moment the house of cards began to fall. Adam and Stephanie believed they held power because they had the house, the titles, and the history. But they were living in the illusion of empty wallet power. Their status was not a solid foundation. It was a luxury they had been renting, with my labor and my stolen capital. They were so focused on the outward display of wealth that they had forgotten that once the ledger is balanced, a debt is a debt. Their position was fragile, built on the erasure of the person who actually kept the numbers straight. "This is a forgery," the lead investor whispered, pointing to the high-resolution copy of my signature. I looked at Adam. He was gray. He looked like a sinking ship that had finally hit the reef. I wasn't an intruder. I was the gold sponsor whose name was still on the program, a title bought with my own stolen inheritance. When the MC handed me the microphone for the scheduled family tribute, I didn't talk about our marriage. I talked about the numbers. "I'm not here for a reconciliation," I said into the microphone. "I'm here for my $350,000 plus interest. The district attorney has the full file, and the officers waiting at the door are here to execute the arrest warrant I helped them build." The finisher was delivered with cold finality. I stepped off the stage, leaving them in the middle of their horrified guests. The manor did not feel like a palace anymore. It felt like a liability. And I was finally closing the file. The legal fallout was swift and absolute. Adam was indicted on federal securities, fraud charges, the paper trail we uncovered leading investigators straight to his offshore accounts. The Charleston Manor, once a symbol of my invisibility, was liquidated under a court order to satisfy the $1,400,000 deficit and return my $350,000 inheritance with full interest. Stephanie was forced into a modest life in a small apartment, her social standing evaporating the moment the bank reclaimed the stages she had built on lies. I moved into a bright, modern office space overlooking the water, a space defined by transparency and truth. I founded my own boutique consulting firm, specializing in forensic audits for high stakes legal battles. This was the justice of the sower. I realized that true victory was not just watching Adam's empire crumble, it was taking the assets I recovered and planting something that would grow for others. I was no longer a ghost haunting someone else's ledger. I was the architect of my own blueprint. I've come to realize that many of us are taught that enduring toxic treatment is a form of strength. We are told that family is a bond that requires us to make ourselves smaller. But I have learned to let go of the idea that blood ties grant a license for exploitation. Real family is defined by the respect, love, and dignity they provide, not just a shared name. If you find yourself in a situation that demands your silence as the price of admission, remember that your silence can also be the quiet gathering of evidence. You do not have to raise your voice to be powerful. You just have to wait for the audit. To those of you who feel like you are standing on the edge, invisible in your own homes, I see you. You are not a burden, and you are not a domestic appliance. You are a person of immense value, and you deserve a life where your contributions are recognized. Forgiveness is not always about the other person. Sometimes it's the final entry that balances the books so you can finally set yourself free. If Madison's journey has reminded you that your intelligence is your sharpest weapon, hit that like button and share this story with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our community for more stories of quiet strength and absolute justice. Always stay alert and never forget your own worth.